1914 was supposed to be the pinnacle of human achievement. Instead, it was the moment humanity accidentally invented modern hell. Look at Europe right before the collapse. Massive empires spanned continents. Railways, telegraphs, and factories had modernized everyday life. By every metric, civilization was at its absolute peak of progress. With every new invention, telegraphs connecting the globe, medicine defeating disease, the prevailing belief was that humanity had outgrown primitive conflict. Leading thinkers argued that modern economies were too interconnected, and modern societies too rational for the barbarism of the past to ever return. This belief created a fatal blind spot. When the mobilization orders arrived, millions of young men marched off with the confidence of a society that had forgotten what total war actually looked like. Beneath all that wealth and technology, Europe was highly unstable. Every single major power operated in a state of systemic paranoia. Germany feared encirclement by France and Russia. Britain feared any single nation controlling the continent. Austria-Hungary feared its own diverse empire fracturing. On June 28th, Gavrilo Princip fired 2 shots that acted as a detonator for decades of accumulated tension. The assassination provided the necessary excuse for the underlying paranoia to finally surface. Look at this network map. Once Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia, a cascading chain reaction triggered automatically. Russia backed Serbia, Germany backed Austria, France backed Russia. This is escalation momentum. Once mobilizing, leaders froze. Stopping looked weak, and empires feared weakness more than conflict. The continent didn't boldly choose to go to battle. Its leaders surrendered to a fear-driven system they had built, but had no idea how to turn off. Armies marched out with outdated expectations of cavalry charges and bright uniforms. They immediately met 20th century industrial technology. Machine guns could erase thousands of lives in a single afternoon. After French and British forces stopped a massive German advance just outside Paris at the Battle of the Marne, both sides did the only thing they could do to survive. They dug into the earth. Hundreds of miles of static trenches soon stretched all the way from the English Channel to Switzerland. Life in the trenches meant existing in a constant state of sensory overload. Mud swallowed the living, rats fed on the dead, and the rhythmic percussion of artillery shells continued for days without pause. Human psychology had not evolved to process mechanical, indiscriminate slaughter that completely ignored bravery. The constant terror shattered the minds of millions, creating a condition governments barely understood at the time: shell shock, or what we now call PTSD. The mechanical reality of the front line replaced the traditional concept of heroic combat with the reality of industrial slaughter. The slaughter soon expanded far beyond the mud. Modern engineering turned the oceans into hiding places for invisible threats, as German U-boats began attacking ships from beneath the waves. And then the air itself became a weapon. German forces released chlorine gas across the lines at Ypres. For the first time, the simple act of breathing was a lethal vulnerability, forcing humanity to shield its own faces from the sky. This strategic absurdity reached its climax in 1916 at the Battle of Verdun. Germany launched a massive assault on the French fortress city, but capturing the territory wasn't actually the primary goal. Success was measured through attrition, a mathematical calculation of how many thousands of lives each side could afford to lose before the other side ran out. At Verdun, this logic resulted in 700,000 casualties for a front line that barely moved. Modern industry had created a terrifying reality. It had made the physical act of mass killing vastly easier than actually winning a conflict. The extreme, unbroken pressure of total war consumed resources at a massive scale, but it also cracked the internal stability of the world's oldest empires. In Russia, Tsar Nicholas II made a fatal psychological miscalculation. He personally took command of the Russian army. By doing so, he tethered every single catastrophic military defeat and food shortage directly to his own crown. By 1917, the resulting economic collapse and massive death toll triggered an explosion in the streets. The Russian Revolution tore down the centuries-old imperial system entirely. Industrial war consumes more than manpower. It erodes the social contract. When a state fails to provide victory or safety, its people eventually stop recognizing its authority. As the patriotic propaganda faded, it left behind the lost generation. Millions of traumatized survivors returned home, forcing a global society to reckon with its own staggering capacity for barbarism. Exhaustion finally ended the fighting in 1918, leading to the Treaty of Versailles. In this opulent hall, Germany was blamed for the conflict and handed massive punishments. That absolute humiliation seeded severe economic instability and political extremism. Defeated societies rarely remain passive when humiliated. That collective rage and desire for revenge became the direct psychological setup for the horrors of World War II, just 2 decades later. Before 1914, people thought science and wealth would cure humanity of its worst instincts. Instead, the war proved that an advanced civilization does not prevent barbarism. It just ensures that its wars are infinitely more destructive.